Lesson 17, 17th lesson. At the airport.
Mr. and Mrs. Stevens are at the airport. It's 5:15, and they have little time to check in at the airline's counter. They don't have much baggage, just 2 suitcases. Mr. Stevens is putting them on the scale. He knows that the airlines allow 40 pounds of free baggage. It means that if his suitcases weigh 40 pounds or less, he won't have to pay extra charges. But if they weigh more than 40 pounds, he will have to pay for the overweight. The station hostess is going to ask the Stevenses for all their documents, and after checking them, she is going to give Mr. Stevens the boarding passes, seat numbers, and baggage tags. Mrs. Stevens wants to sit near an emergency exit. She feels safer there. Afterwards, they are going to wait until the airline calls to go on board. Mr. Stevens hopes that the plane leaves on time because a delay will involve too many problems.
After waiting for 15 minutes, a voice comes out of the loudspeaker.
Rapid Airways announces the departure of its flight 754 to London. Passengers, please proceed to exit gate number 8.
It's their flight. In a few minutes, they will be on their way to London.
Many suitcases. Few suitcases. Much light. Little light. Station hostess. Counter. Scale. To weigh. Airlines allow 40 pounds of free baggage. To pay extra charges.
Are the Stevenses at the airport? What time is it? Do they have much time to check in at the airline's counter? Do they have much baggage? How many suitcases do they have? How much weight do the airlines allow as free baggage? What does free baggage mean? Who's going to ask the Stevenses for their documents?
Boarding pass. Seat number. Baggage tag. Emergency exit. To wait. On board. Flight departure 6 o'clock. In time. On time.
What's the station hostess going to give the Stevenses? Where does Mrs. Stevens want to sit? Why? Where do you like to sit when you travel by airplane? What are they going to wait for? What does Mr. Stevens hope? What happens if the plane doesn't leave on time? What's the loudspeaker announcing? Mr. and Mrs. Stevens are on the airplane going to London. They're sitting near the wing of the plane. Mr. Stevens is sound asleep. Mrs. Stevens feels elated. She thinks that this trip is a great adventure. Now she is lighting a cigarette. The hostess is going to talk to her.
Please fasten your seatbelt and put out your cigarette.
Why? What's the matter?
We are having some bad weather. Do you want some coffee?
Yes, please. Do you have any chewing gum? My ears are ringing.
Sure. Here you are.
Thank you. Is the plane going down?
Yes, it is. We shall land in 10 minutes.
This is the first time that we're going to London. Where do we pick up our baggage?
At the terminal. When you get off the plane, go up the ramp to the corresponding gate and follow the signs to the baggage claim area.
I imagine that the travel agent will be there waiting for us.
He will, undoubtedly. Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Wing. To be sound asleep. To light a cigarette. To fasten the seatbelt. To put out a cigarette. Bad weather. Chewing gum. Mrs. Stevens' ears are ringing.
Where are the Stevenses now? Where are they sitting? Is Mr. Stevens awake? How does Mrs. Stevens feel? Is this trip a great adventure for her? Is she lighting a cigarette? Who's going to talk to her? What instructions is the hostess giving to Mrs. Stevens?
To land. To follow the signs. Travel agent. To pick up the baggage. Baggage claim area.
What's the flight hostess offering to Mrs. Stevens? What's Mrs. Stevens asking the hostess for? Why? How much time left is there before the plane lands? Where are the Stevenses going to pick up their baggage? What do the passengers have to do when they leave the plane? Is there anything that worries Mrs. Stevens?
There is some coffee in the coffee pot. There isn't any coffee in the coffee pot, or there is no coffee in the coffee pot.
Is there any coffee in the coffee pot? Are there any books in the classroom? Do you have any cassettes at home?
There is someone on the plane. There is somebody on the plane. There isn't anyone on the plane. There isn't anybody on the plane, or there is no one. There is nobody.
Is there anyone in your house now? Does anybody help you study English? Will anybody be waiting for you after class?
There is something on the overhead shelf. There isn't anything on the overhead shelf, or there is nothing on the overhead shelf.
Is there anything on your desk? Is there anything in the drawers? Do you see anything on the walls?
The flight hostess is somewhere on the plane. The flight hostess isn't anywhere on the plane, or she is nowhere.
Is there a TV set anywhere in the institute? Is the travel agent anywhere at the airport?